golfers, Tony back again, talking about the golf club. This time we're going to take a look at the difference between a driver and an iron. Again, these are composite tour averages, but I thought this would kind of give us some insight on do you swing a driver differently than an iron? And the answer is yes and no. So depending on which perspective, we'll kind of get into that. So looking at this, we kind of created the functional swing plane. And this happens to be, the club actually appears to go a little bit more outside on this path right here with the driver. But we also still see that club face kind of still pitching down a little bit, which is good to see. So we see that. But obviously, we'll see how things go on the way back. So that's where some of it's the same, where I like to see that driver swing, stay on that functional swing plane, going back, letting that trail wrist go into extension, club face staying a little square to its path. And again, we can see it come off the line, and there's a lot of different positions up at the top. And the timing between the driver and the iron are also different, so I'm going to kind of do that, get these back up to the top. So it takes longer, club's longer. It's going to take you longer to kind of get there with the driver swing. So be patient with that. It's a longer club. You need more time to build up that speed in the backswing. And so this way you can kind of start releasing it on the way down. But it's a longer club. Don't be in a big hurry with it. So, but if we take a look at, again, we see the club face not in a toe down position. So the club face isn't open. So let's see what takes a look at what is happening on the way down. And again, we see that club working back. And you can see there's a natural opening of the face. So if you take a look, especially with the driver, that club face gets into more of a toe-up position. Part of that is the length of the club. Part of that is also depends on how your grip alignment is, and also depends on that with the ball being up on the tee and that face design being different, how the club moves into the ball is dramatically different than the iron. That's where the differences come in. What we're trying to do physically to create the speed into the club is not different. And that's the reason why it's a yes and no type of thing. So we'll see better from the front view, and we'll look at some numbers. But we're going to see, obviously, we get back to that functional swing plane, and then it's going through. Now you can say here, well, it's not on plane. Part of that is also perspective. You have to remember that as things, we have convergence in 2D video. Things go closer to the middle. But it's still relatively on a plane, then obviously it's jumping off quick here. So this will give you a perspective from side view, knowing that there are some similarities in the functional swing plane, but that face angle can be a little bit different with the driver versus an iron. Part of that is club design. Next, let's take a look at it from the front view. Okay, golfers, we should obviously see a major difference at address, but it's not always the case. Again, depending on your grip alignment. If you have a stronger grip, you can actually see a little bit of shaft lean forward, and you actually see that with some of the tour players. So it's one of those you kind of have to mix and mirror the appropriate grip alignment, club design, and your swing tendencies. And that's the complexity of golf. It's when you don't have all those matched up in a nice little, we'll call it a nice simple matrix of how things work together. If you don't have that dialed in, then that's where inconsistencies will come in. So a couple things, obviously, what do we see right from the address? We see shaft lean forward, shaft lean back. That's the design of the club. So that's what we should be falling into, base it off the design of the club. So we kind of just taking a look at some, let me make this a little smaller here. So we've been talking about the club face position. When we get that into our shaft parallel position, that alignment, these are just some general checkpoints. And so again, we can see that they pretty much look identical. Again, from this perspective, letting that trail wrist get an extension. And so now obviously at the top we can see a much longer swing. I like to, with that driver, let that club get set. What that does in allowing that shaft to kind of come down a little bit really sets that trail wrist into extension, which once we get in the arms and body, we'll get into that and show you, and we'll put all this together. But that really gives you that ability to load that club at the top of the backswing, so this way you can use it on the way down. Now the biggest difference that we're going to see is then at impact. Because ball position obviously is a little bit different. Ball's up on a tee, so when we get down to impact, and you can actually see here, we'll get it a little bit forward, you can see we don't have as much shaft lean. But if we take a look at the driver, where it is now versus where it was at address, I'll bring these back. What do we notice? We are actually seeing shaft lean relative to the starting point. So again, dynamically, you're not going to get in the same position through impact as you are going to be at address. So a lot of times if you're trying to match up lines at address and at impact, it's not the case, doesn't need to match up. We want to make sure we get into good alignment. So again, we're looking about 4 or 5 degrees angle down with the iron, angle of attack. Driver, more we can optimize a positive upward angle of approach, the less backspin will create, the greater distance. But again, it has to match up. And that's one thing. So long drive guys, yeah, they're using 5-6 degree drivers. We're seeing a greater angle up, 5 to 7 degrees. If you have a high lofted driver, and you may want to swing at 0, depending on where that center mass in the driver. So again, we get into a whole bit of club design and things like that, but we're not going to get into that. But that's a great topic for another day. So paths are a little bit different. Angle of attacks are different. This club is actually swinging up and left slightly through impact. And again, the ball's on the tee, that inclined plane. That's the reason why it's going to be left. And we see the hands working there. So this way the club face at impact is not going to be pointed left. And that's one thing to remember, is we need to keep that club face square relative to the target line in order to have a consistent shot pattern. And with the speed that we have, we'll just take this at impact. And as it goes into the finish, we just want to go ahead and keep letting that go. So these are just some perspectives. This is more a visualization of just the club movement itself. And the reason why I'm doing this and the reason why I'm approaching it from this perspective is I want you to realize that is the priority. What we do physically is a result of how we move in order to create these impact alignments between the club and the ball. And that's the thing to remember. So takeaway on this, remember, address and impact are two different things for both the driver and for the iron. And it's a little bit simpler with the iron because we think of shaft lean and compression downward, but we actually want a little bit of that forward shaft lean, but more of a level compression. And that's the way to get the most distance out of our driver swing. Okay, so keep practicing this, and we'll continue to get further along into the ABCs of the golf swing. Thanks for watching.